New world order. We all need to be prompt engineers, and we all have to understand that agents are going to start executing things on our behalf. The impact on jobs will be disproportionate. Low-skilled, low-wage, some types of workers will be impacted first and hardest.
On today's episode, we're talking with future of work expert Jess Von Bank. What's the profile of somebody who looks like the perfect candidate to work alongside artificial intelligence now?
Knowing how to be a curious learner, knowing how to self-educate, being willing to experiment and play with tools.
Who is on the negative receiving side of bias within artificial intelligence now? If you were to give me, and who's listening today, the top 3 ethical considerations for AI right now, what would they be?
For me, with any technology, certainly with AI,
AI isn't just knocking on the door of your workplace. It's already inside. From resume screening to skills development, artificial intelligence is revolutionizing the way we work today and into the future. I'm Bradley Sherman, and this is Population Next. And on today's episode, we're talking with future of work expert Jess Von Bank about where AI is today and where it is taking us in the future. Hey, Jess, welcome to Population Next. It's good to have you here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. You're one of my favorite voices. Jess, we're really looking at the future today and the future of populations, but I wanted to zoom in on the workforce, given your expertise in the future of work, and talk about where things are going, especially as it relates to artificial intelligence. Can you give me a sense of where the labor market is today? It seems like it's pretty tight.
Yeah, it's sort of fascinating to me that I've been in this industry and career for over 2 decades now, and I don't think the storyline has ever changed. We can never find enough people. How is this possible? But it is true. There are certainly shifts in the population of the world and the working population of the world that make that a true statement. We're in a severe skills shortage, which is also a people shortage, but we're going to solve the skill problem a little bit differently, I think, based on emerging tech and AI automation. But it is true, we're always a little bit in dire straits when it comes to having enough people with the right skills to pivot to work in real time. Our talent models have been rigid and transactional to date. And so we're going to see a lot of busting up of work and talent models to find some of that agility and flexibility. And there's going to be an automation and skills movement like we've never seen before to answer some of these challenges. It's an interesting time to be doing the work of people in organizations.
You said 2 things here I'd like to pull apart a bit. Skills gap versus people gap. Can you explain the nuanced difference between the two?
I think in the last few years, we were already having skills conversations, and we were already looking for more talent intelligence to understand who and how work gets done. But we were having those conversations from a human resources perspective. That is the actual function of HR, and they own the workforce and culture activation. They own strategic workforce planning. But for the first time in the last, I would say 5 years or so, we've been asking better questions. What is the work to be done, and what are all of the ways that work can get done? And the reason we're asking better questions is because we actually have different answers at our disposal. It wasn't necessarily possible for us to automate everything that could be automated before. Emerging tech like generative AI and all types of AI, there are differences, now give us a different array of potential answers. And so now it's a work design conversation. It's not just a human resource planning and strategic workforce planning initiative. It's a work design conversation, and it's a human machine teaming conversation that we just haven't been able to have before.
And what do you see some of the top line talking points or discussion points around this right now? Because it is moving very fast.
So it's really interesting. AI is the the topic du jour, and it will be both part of the problem and part of the solution. We've seen this before with tech. Tech gives and tech takes away. There's always, and you talk about this a lot, Bradley, there's always there's impact on jobs and people, to be sure. And of course, there's job displacement. We talk really, we talk from a place of fear, uncertainty, and doubt when we talk about AI coming for people's jobs. Okay, we've always had this Darwinism of work. We don't get in an elevator and ask the elevator operator to push the button for us anymore. And we don't see lamplighters walking the streets, lighting oil lamps like 100 years ago. So this Darwinism of work is a natural evolution. It's okay. I have electricity in my house. I don't light a fire unless I want to for ambiance. It's okay that work evolves as long as we evolve people as well. That's the skills problem we're having right now. The impact on jobs will be disproportionate. Low skilled, low wage, some types of workers will be impacted first and hardest. Women, for example, hold more of the jobs, are overrepresented in some of the job sectors that are likely to be automated first. So that's a good thing for us to be mindful and aware of. Low wage, low skilled, some representative demographics of the workforce are going to be hit first and hardest. So what are we going to do to reposition, redeploy, reskill them toward emerging jobs? And so these are insights that are really important for us to have. AI is advancing these conversations because AI and automation are changing the nature of work and jobs much faster than we were prepared for. We're going to be caught off guard with all of this. But ironically, that's where AI can also help because it helps us analyze and predict and have some insights and analytics that were hard for us to get at before, at least in any sort of real-time fashion. It can also do some really cool predictive stuff to say, here are the emerging gaps you can anticipate in your workforce. Here's some ways to address those skill gaps and move people to places where the business will need them in the next 5 years. It can help support talent strategies to create a more durable, flexible talent pipeline for the future. And it can help deliver learning development skills to those people in a much more accessible, sort of way than we had before. So problem and solution all in one tidy little package.
But how do you account for, before I get to some specific questions on the jobs and the future of work, how do you account for managing human latency and decision-making when your HR leaders, for example, might be stuck on the old way of doing things? Are you seeing that the people in power, so to speak, are picking up these tools and trying to learn them at an advanced rate? Or is it still very mixed bag within HR and, quite frankly, C-suite positions?
So that conversation is interesting. The C-suite is very much aware of and excited about the opportunities and the potential impact of AI. And for the C-suite, it's very much an efficiency and productivity conversation. We can do more with less. We can do the same thing with less. We can also do more with less. And when you think about headcount planning, workforce investments, when they purchase tech versus invest in human teams, this is a planning conversation. Again, back to the question, what's the work that needs to be done and what are all of the ways that work can get done? A CFO worth his or her salt is saying, is this a human team? Is this a piece of tech? Is this a platform that can accomplish part of this? What are all of the ways that we can operate the business, deliver innovation, service customers? And so the efficiency and productivity conversation is very much happening in the C-suite. So is the innovation and competitive advantage. Are there new services and solutions and better, more efficient ways to deliver them? Can we crack open markets we couldn't or didn't before? So I think the innovation conversation is there as well. AI is also very expensive. Operationally, it's very expensive to invest in, operate, run. And so it's also do we build, buy, partner? What's the right way to wrangle this new piece of technology for gain for our business. We're finding at Mercer, investment is up. The thing with AI, like the time to adoption and the time to value is faster than any piece of technology we've seen in history. So we'll know really fast. Like we'll learn and we'll know really fast what's working and what's not working. Problem with that is that we're also going to make mistakes just that fast. We're going to trip up over ourselves. We have to create these cultures of learning on the fly. We haven't had a whole lot of nimbleness and agility. We don't do well in flux, organizationally speaking. And so we're going to have to get comfortable with a little bit more flux and test and learn and refine as we go, sort of methodologies, including in how we enable the workforce. C-suite is on board. Some of our research shows that when any executive speaks about potential impact, future opportunity related to AI, the HR executive has the most influence and impact. When people, leaders, speak about impact and opportunity and, impact on jobs and, sort of the reality of things, they have the most influence on workers getting on board, trusting AI, playing with the tools, seeing how it can make their own lives and work and jobs better. So we have to speak more and educate the workforce and bring them on the journey. It feels like AI is happening to us, not for us. That's the part we need to fix.
Right. You did say early on that there are certain classes of jobs, and you alluded to it also being within certain genders that are going to be most impacted by this on the front end. Do you see those jobs as simply going away, like the lamplighter, or do you see a majority of jobs perhaps just evolving with AI as a partner?
Both. I mean, data entry jobs will go away, should go away. Data analysis jobs, data scientist jobs, emerging, high growth, as they should be. And so there is a shifting for sure. Anything you can put analyst behind, data analyst, financial analyst, in any of those. And this is a little bit concerning because, again, we're not going to be ahead of it. We're going to catch up to it. This changes what we consider to be entry-level, early career jobs. I don't know how somebody will learn coding from an entry-level standpoint because AI can do code. Like we have technology that codes now, but will we need senior experienced coders as subject matter experts to be able to audit and manage and govern code? For sure. And so it's a rethinking of what can be done as first pass work in a faster, more efficient, even higher quality way. Think of AI doing first pass work on almost anything, and then reimagine and reconsider humans in the loop. What would need to be designed and governed and quality controlled, and what happens next after that that's more strategic and planful as a result of that work coming to us faster, those insights being created faster. We have a dashboard on almost everything these days because the data can be crunched and returned to us in a more insightful, real-time way. That's exciting. So that creates new opportunity and people with different skill sets to do something with that. So it's a little bit of both to answer your question.
So let me ask maybe a bit of a too honest question here. What's the profile of somebody who looks like the perfect candidate to work alongside artificial intelligence now?
Oh, what a good question. I would say curious. I think we have to, if I were to coach my own kids who are currently 16, 14, and 12, when they talk about what they might want to do one day, is college still relevant? We have these conversations. I don't think the answer has changed, and it certainly feels reinforced to me now. Learning how to learn, knowing how to be a curious learner, knowing how to self-educate, being willing to experiment and play with tools. I think that's a great skill set for someone. And then there has to be the permission and agency. Organizations need to create these cultures of continuous learning. The only way to close these skill gaps that we have and we'll have even more of is to create cultures of continuous on-the-job learning in the moment. You have to be able to get your hands dirty. You have to be willing to get your hands filthy with experimentation, learning, figuring out. and sharing institutional knowledge. Something you speak a lot about, Brandley, is the aging workforce, the fact that we'll have more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 18. And that's not changing based on death and birth rates. Like, that's the new reality, that we'll have older workers staying in the workforce longer. Good. And what are we going to do with all of that institutional knowledge to make sure that we're passing that down to close skill gaps, that we're creating sort of shared institutional knowledge that isn't worker specific? Those are, I mean, for anybody, developing people strategies, which includes talent development, which includes these reskilling strategies, not just attracting talent, but retaining and grooming talent always. These are important considerations. You can't just have curriculum that's one and done, check the box on required learning. People need to learn, experiment, and share all the time. It's a different way of thinking about talent, and it's a different way of thinking about learning as part of your job.
All right. So I'm hearing lifelong learning coming from you as being an essential function. I'm wondering about early education too, Jess, if you have some thoughts about that. We've put so much attention in the past decade or so on STEM education.
Yeah.
This early kind of iteration of programming, for example, is basically being done by machine. Do you think that to enhance this level of curiosity amongst future and current workers, we need to lean more into liberal education, understanding history and culture and communications too?
Oh, you ask such good questions. Yeah, I started my career in recruiting almost 25 years ago, and I worked for a healthcare system. And clinical people, healthcare people were in shortage, are in shortage, will forever be in shortage. And so I sort of lived in this environment of, if you can't find them, you make them. And so employers like the one I worked for, which hired tens of thousands of clinical professionals every single year, not just in healthcare systems, but in healthcare delivery systems, call centers, all of these things. They went to schools and created programs and attracted people into the actual program. Like, they weren't even doing employer attraction. They were literally trying to get young people interested in nursing degrees and clinical, licensures and certifications, so that they even had a chance at hiring them when they came out the other side. I think we're going to see a lot of that in STEM, technical, AI, data design, data fluency, data scientist, all of these emerging careers. I think we're going to see the same sort of, like, we've got to build the funnels, and it's got to start. So whether that's more STEM schools and programs, if it's AI literacy and fluency in school, I'm not seeing that yet, but I think we will. A few years ago, not even a couple of years ago, I helped my high school daughter with an essay. She had read the material, watched the movie, done the workbook, and she had to write this final piece. And she was having a bit of writer's block. And I said, ask ChatGPT to give you a writing outline based on your notes. Not cheating in my mind. She asked me if it was. I said, I don't know. Did the teacher give you any guidance? To me, it was like using Grammarly or spell check. It's just it's guidance to help refine your final output. So we did. We used a tool to create a writing outline, and she filled in the rest. It was her writing, her voice, her understanding of the material, and the teacher spit it back at her and said, I can tell this isn't yours. Shame on that educator, but it was very new at the time. I get it.
Sure.
Very new at the time. So I think all of us, even at an educational system level, will understand how to empower a generation who's already AI fluent, who is already talking to AI in their Snapchat. It's not just employers. We all have to get on board with what a digital native looks like in 2025 and beyond, and not fight it, but embrace it and figure out how to help these young people carve paths for themselves that might not include a 4-year degree. Maybe it includes trade school. Maybe it includes a technical certificate or something. But to the specific question around liberal arts, please don't forget art and creativity and how to write music from scratch. Like, all of that is still pertinent and relevant. I bet $1,000 I bet every dollar I have, creators are also leveraging technology for good. It's a cool new tool for anybody, regardless of what you do. But I hope we don't stop painting on real canvases.
Yeah, I mean, I think the human experience of work, whether that be in a creative field, a communications field, or even just managing people, cannot be eroded. I think that's one of the big questions that exists with artificial intelligence right now. Is it taking away our humanness or is it enhancing it? And, it's somewhat TBD. Because this year is the first year of generation beta being born. And this generation will be the first generation, not as digital natives, but as AI natives. And that means that they're only 15 years away, this first wave, from hitting the early workforce as 15-year-olds working in those part-time jobs. But I've been fascinated to see the resistance to some degree of educators, to other degrees within businesses, to not develop a framework, at least, and that probably sounds like an overly technical term, a framework for how to use AI well and what is accepted and what is not. Because do you agree that for all the promise there is quite a bit of risk as well, at least in this iteration of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, and it's not just how to use the tools, it's how to use them discerningly. Just like any data set or algorithm, there's inherent bias. Data in, data out. Design in, quality output out. And so even just how the tech works, we don't all need to be engineers and prompt engineer, we do all need to be prompt engineers. That's the new world. New world order. We all need to be prompt engineers, and we all have to understand that agents are going to start executing things on our behalf. Just like we got used to talking to chatbots, that's just how the world is going to evolve. I think having a discerning mind for data integrity and data privacy, what I'm willing to give up about myself, my voice, my understanding of the world, how I discern information that is presented back to me. I use a handful of tools and they're well trained on my voice, on sources of thought leadership and information and knowledge that I like to use because they're verifiable and they're credible. I still fact check rigorously. I teach it. Talk to me like an analyst. Talk to me like a marketer. Explain this to me like I'm a kindergartner. That's an evolving skill set as well. And I think it will come naturally. I mean, for generation beta, they're already there. We're not even going to have to teach them. But for some of us crossing the AI divide, we have to teach each other. We're going to talk about how to do this. And I do think that understanding that it's a toddler learning to walk as well. We are, and so is AI. Like, we're going to have to be okay with it being imperfect. We're designing it, we're governing it, we're putting it in places where we think it can produce high quality, valuable outputs. This is still a human conversation. AI is not a runaway train, unless we let it be. Like, this is still for us to make decisions around. And that kind of ethical governance and sort of responsibility around that is really important to me anyway.
Before we get to the ethical governance piece, that's something I really want to touch on. I want to pull on a little thread that you threw out there about bias. Information in, information out. Who is on the negative receiving side of bias within artificial intelligence now? And how do people using it fight back against that bias? Because I hear all the time, AI is essentially a giant mirror on society.
Yeah. Well, so generative AI, if you understand how large language models work, it's literally a large language model. It uses all of the content and data sets it has access to. And if you close it off and you use one in your organization, it only has your organizational enterprise data. So there's some control there. But all of these consumer GPTs and large language models that are free and public or paid pro, you can upgrade. But OpenAI, for example, and everybody else that's providing these consumer tools, it's trained on the Internet of Things. It's everything it has access to, rightly or wrongly. I mean, they're maybe using, published materials that somebody you know, if you wrote a book, guess what? It read your book.
Yeah.
And it's quoting you rightly or wrongly. So it's using everything it has access to, and it's training itself. These large language models are hungry for data to train themselves and refine and become better. And they're tricky. They can perform well one day and perform poorly the next day based on a lot of different factors. And so if you're using these tools, it's just even just having that fundamental knowledge and understanding. There are a lot of free courses, by the way, to give you the 101, 201, even advanced stuff on how these models work. And so, and now even since they've been released, now most of the GPTs offer source citation. You can say, give me the sources for all of this. Give me only these sources because I trust them. It's knowledge I would validate or I would seek myself. But otherwise, you kind of have to understand that it's using a wide open array of sources that you don't necessarily know or trust. But even in how the information is returned, you would want to know what those sources are, number one, but also if there was inherent bias in those sources, there are ways to sort of query the tools to say, actually show me the impact of this on this demographic or, that type of thing. It's just like when we developed things like facial recognition systems. I know where I live in Minneapolis, the Mall of America, the largest mall in the country, tried rolling out a facial recognition system to recognize guests of the mall who might have warrants out, who might be a criminal.
Wow.
Or on some list, right? And what an interesting concept. And they had to roll it back as quickly as they rolled it out because it was improperly identifying certain people of certain demographics because the technology was not well trained enough to recognize certain disparities. That's true of most technology. Yeah. that we use, unless it is well trained on every possible data set and tested and refined for accurate outputs, you can assume it's going to work improperly. And unfortunately, technology that works improperly usually harms underrepresented, marginalized groups of people. That's the whole point. They're not well represented, so they're probably not well trained in your data set. We're really going down a rabbit hole now.
Yeah. So Jess, if you were to give me and who's listening today, the top 3 ethical considerations for AI right now, what would they be? Or what do you foresee them to be in the coming months and years?
Yeah. For me, with any technology, certainly with AI, it's data, design, and deployment. I know you didn't expect me to have that ready so fast.
No, but that's fantastic.
All the time. Quality data sets of trusted data. And especially if you're an enterprise and you're managing a workforce and you're trying to use and train a tool for your workforce, what workforce data you have rights to, access to, is it being used for good? If you were to give me a tool to help me personalize my benefits experience, I probably don't mind if you have my demographic data. I would want you to know that I'm a mother and I have 3 dependents that are children, not dependents. And I would want you to know that I don't need pet insurance, but I am interested in this benefit. Like, I would actually want you to know quite personal details about me so that you can say, Jess, I'm not sure you know, we have this great benefit over here you've never seen or I trust. I mean, that's to me, an even exchange of value. You should know me really well so that you can give me stuff that's pertinent and relevant to my experience at work, make my life easier, make my job better. But if you're using data improperly, or if you're giving me wrong answers, it's not right and it's not relevant, that's sort of like, that's where we get clumsy with data. It doesn't actually produce any, sort of the right value and impact. So data is a big part of both the ethical data privacy conversation, but also in sort of the design and deployment of solutions that are actually meaningful and valuable, value adding for how people experience work and life. And that goes in with the design too. You should have pretty cross-functional, lots of stakeholders, making sure you're testing for every persona, for every possible constituent who wants value out of a solution, designed for the most marginalized of the demographics you're testing for. I promise you'll get it right for everybody if you get it right for the most marginalized. I will arm wrestle over that.
I agree with you. You're preaching to the choir on that.
But unfortunately, we design for the defaults. The default
Sure.
only serves the default. So I promise if we design for the most marginalized, we'll get it right and even better for everybody. And deployment is just that, the concept of continuous improvement, listening and requesting feedback, continuously refining the output, not trusting that, there's no set it and forget it with deployment of technology, especially with AI. So that willingness to go to the design lab and really understand outputs and being willing to refine the strategy to make sure you're getting to those outputs. We talk about this all the time with transformation initiatives with enterprises. We resource projects and we rush for sort of milestones and finish lines instead of being willing to resource continuous change, because this stuff is changing and evolving so fast. You have to be almost willing to have an innovation center where it's always improving and refining and evolving. That's the great way to think about tech. It's also a great way to think about your workforce.
So one last question for you, Jess. Your daughter's 16 years old. She's entering the workforce within the next, ideally, presumably, the next 6 years. If you were to give her one or two pieces of advice, and really advice for anyone in the workforce today about what to expect as the future of work intersects with the future of artificial intelligence and these demographic challenges that we're heading up against with a smaller pipeline and more retirees or more extended working lives, what would you say?
So she's an interesting one in particular because she's not all that academically minded. She's a smart kid, but she doesn't like school, the institution, the curriculum, she's sort of a world learner. We came back from spring break actually a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "Mom, I've got it now. I need to own a ranch in Hawaii on Big Island." Wow. And I said, "You, a ranch?" And she said, "Well, I know a couple of things about myself. I need to stay physically active. I need to be physically busy. I like to work hard. I like to sort of exhaust myself. That's rewarding to me." That's a great insight for a young person to have. But she said, "I also know I'm terrible to boss. So I think I need to be a boss. I'd be good at bossing. I'm terrible to boss." Ownership. This is the thing about young people, and I'm witnessing this with all of their friends too. Ownership and agency are very important to them. So the concept of her not working on somebody else's ranch or working for somebody else's business versus having something of her own. And so she said, "I think I just need to go to a business school, trade school. I just need to learn how to run and operate a business. And then that's the type of business I would want to operate. Physical, out and about. I want to move around and work with people." Like, you could fast forward 20 years and most grown people don't have that insight about themselves yet. Yeah. So I think it's cool that a young person sees a world of possibility like that. And they don't think college is the only answer. She doesn't feel a sense of responsibility, and she knows I won't force it. I don't know if that's the answer for everybody either. I think walking out with a degree and thinking that's going to do something for the rest of your life, that idea has changed quite rapidly.
It's a false narrative.
Yeah.
At least it seems these days.
Yeah.
Jess, this has been absolutely fantastic. I hope to have you back sometime. You're just a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, thank you. I love that you asked. You know that I've been a big follower. I think you're talking about important stuff, which is sort of how the world is changing and morphing. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you. The question isn't whether AI is replacing people. It's whether or not we're ready to evolve alongside with it. As Jess made it clear, AI is already in your enterprise. It's already changing the nature of work. And those that are willing to pivot, to move along with it, will likely see a very successful future. Those who don't, well, they risk becoming obsolete. If you'd like to get more insights about how the nature of work is changing in the most unusual places, thanks largely to the demographic stress of our times, and of course, the technological revolution, check into my most recent episode about how the demographic pressures in Ukraine and Russia are pushing battlefield technologies forward. I think you'll find it incredibly interesting. As always, I'm Bradley Sherman for Population Next, and thanks for listening.